Welcome to the Inside Tack Show, everybody. We're back after 6 months and a lot has happened. That is an understatement. We have our regular crew alongside us. We've got Jim, Ben and Dave with us today, and we're also joined with Toto Wolff and James Allison here too. You may have noticed that we are not by our usual location, by the sea. Oh no. We have moved. We find ourselves in landlocked Brackley instead, at the home of the most successful Formula One team of all time, Mercedes-AMG F1 team. What you may be asking is happening. Here's your answer.
The America's Cup is the ultimate team sport. To win, we have to assemble a world-class team. Every single team member, from design, build, sailing, support, is reliant on one another to get the best possible performance from the boat. We're taking on teams with over 25 years of experience. We're entering our third consecutive British Challenge, bringing with us the continuity needed for success. We have a team that can handle adversity and that knows how to fight back, learning from the hard-fought lessons of our previous campaigns.
Trouble for INEOS Team UK.
Our approach will be rigorous, fusing together the talent and creativity from Formula One and the America's Cup. Collaboration will be key. Mercedes-AMG F1 Applied Science bring a legacy of design and continuity. They're proven winners. It's in their DNA. It's in their culture. Together we will take on one of sport's most technical challenges, inspiring a future generation of problem solvers, whilst providing a pathway for inclusion and diversity in our sport. The team are ready to take on the challenge.
Okay, let's put a little bit more flesh on the bones and talk to the team about exactly why we're here. Jim, let's start with you. You're here, you haven't run for the hills, you're still with us. That's wonderful news. Tell us about this unique sporting partnership that we have here and why it's so important to you to fuse your INEOS sports teams together, and this one in particular.
Well, I think Formula One and the America's Cup, they share this common theme where you need to be excellent in the sport and the technology. And not many sports really share that sort of hybrid thing. And obviously the Mercedes guys on my left here, they're probably the most successful Formula One team there's ever been. And that's a combination of, good drivers, but wonderful technology. I mean, they've had a car that's capable of winning. And it's the same challenge in the America's Cup, really. I don't think the Brits have ever arrived at an America's Cup with a boat that probably could have won, even though we've had some fantastic sailors. And our boat that we had for the AC-36, it wasn't capable of winning. Technically, it wasn't quite good enough. I mean, we learnt lots of lessons, but I think the combination of the technical expertise that Mercedes Formula One team have, together with Ben and his team, I think has the prospect of being quite exciting.
You may not want to go back there, but I'm going to take you back there anyway, to the last Cup, the last edition of this America's Cup campaign. How did you find it? It was a bit of a baptism of fire. How did you find the Cup campaign? It had highs, it had lows, it had a little bit of everything. What are your memories from that time?
Oh, well, all the memories are wonderful, really, because it is a wonderful event. But it's also an event that you need to immerse yourself in a little bit, because it's very exciting. There's lots of thrills and spills, particularly on foils, because you've got this 6-ton vessel travelling at almost 100 kilometres an hour, and they're clearly, even if you're as good as Ben, they're clearly quite difficult to control. So it's exciting, but also there are many subtleties, and it takes time to. It's a high-quality sport, a bit like Formula One. There are many subtleties in Formula One, which is why you sort of get captivated by it. It's sort of the opposite of 10-pin bowling, where 5 minutes you've had enough. You can stay interested for a long time. So I got quite absorbed in the tactics and the strategy and all the technical issues that they were facing, and the excitement of it.
Ben, it's so not often that you get to fuse different sports and different top professionals at their levels of their own sport as well together. I mean, this is a really unique opportunity, isn't it? Being paired and partnered with a group of sports people that know how to achieve things as you do?
Oh, it's an incredible opportunity for us. I mean, I have to say a huge thank you to Toto and James and Geoff and the rest of the team here. When you come to this site at Brackley, it's hugely impressive. And certainly now we've been working with the team here, 3 or 4 months. And the discipline that you feel as you come in and work with the guys, it's infectious, really. So I think for our organisation, that collaboration, taking it to the next level, which ultimately we need to do if we're going to take on the mighty Kiwis, the All Blacks of sailing, that's the sort of focus and attention that we need.
We've lost some faces, we've gained some faces. What does the new look team look like?
Yeah, that's right. Inevitably, you move forwards. Some people, sadly, don't come on the journey with us, but we brought in some fresh new talent as well. On the design side, we've got, Martin Fischer, for example, who's come across from Luna Rossa. He's one of the top naval architects in the world. Nat Shaver, who's one of the sort of superstar forward designers in America's Cup world. And on the sailing side as well, it's early days. We're still finalising the protocol with Team New Zealand, and the deadline for that is mid-November, and both teams are pushing hard for that. But it's not really until we get those rules fixed, as it is for all of the other teams, that we can really finalise those plans and push forwards.
Toto, have you been long harbouring a desire to be involved in the Cup world? I mean, how on earth did this come about?
Yeah, I'm asking that myself until today. I guess the troublemaker sits here, Jim. No, I always shared the passion for engineering, and there's not a lot of difference between trying to put the best car on the road and racing others than Formula One on water, and that is the America's Cup. And we slowly merged into the project pretty late into the last campaign, but we loved it. I could see the buzz within the organization that people started to follow America's Cup and took it embraced it as our own project. And now we're doing it properly next time around. And I think we have the same mindset. It's about trying to do the best possible job, hopefully good enough to be right there.
Ben talked in that piece of video about winning being in your DNA. It's not always been the case. I mean, how do you build a successful team and then keep them there right at the top?
I think the most important is to stay humble and be able to really have a mindset of being able to criticize yourself. When you listen to one of our debriefs Monday morning after a race that we have been lucky enough to win, it doesn't sound like this was the team that won, because we are always skeptical about our own achievement. We all suffer in a way from an imposter syndrome. The people must be really good in this team to have made us win, because I don't know really what my contribution was. And that goes all through the organization. Everybody feels that, even the most highly skilled engineers. And I think that keeps us grounded. And every year we see ourselves not as the one to beat, but in a way there's this challenger mentality. We set the expectations in the right way, and we feel zero sense of entitlement.
You've been very generous. You've effectively given Ben James, sort of. You've loaned him out. How does that work? How does that dynamic pair out?
Yeah, it comes from the ambition to be successful in America's Cup. James has been a technical director in a team for a long time, has obviously developed an organization with his team that was able to, keep on the top. And James then has moved into a next role, which is overseeing all of the technical organization here in Brackley. He is a sparring partner for the guys in HPP who do the engines, and a similar role will be within the America's Cup structure, with all his expertise as a technical director in Mercedes Formula One.
James, how's it been going so far?
Well,
you like this bunch of sailors?
It's been really, really interesting and exciting so far. I think it's interesting that Toto used the word humble at the first thing about what has been important here in Brackley. And when people talk about America's Cup being like Formula One on water, the I think most people are immediately thinking, well, it's a bit hydrodynamic, it's a bit aerodynamic, it's technological, it's all of those things. But actually, the most striking comparison to me is that it's difficult. And the way in which it's worked okay for us in F1 is having the humility to admit that it's difficult, that your competitors will eat you up if for one moment you stop remembering that it's difficult. And this challenge is proper difficult. and really exciting that there's a team of experienced America's Cup engineers that are absolutely at the heart of what we're doing, who Ben and Dave have brought to bear on this project. And Mercedes are bringing our own engineers to it as well, all of them capable, skillful engineers who hopefully, working with people who've done this cup before and understand it, working together, we actually will create something pretty special, good enough for this really difficult challenge.
Yeah, are you going to aim for sort of one big happy family here? Because there's going to be a lot of voices, you know, lending their thing, aren't they? Their own voice.
That too has been interesting, because as we, in the opening weeks, months of getting this group of people together, we talk about, oh, well, there's the people from the MGP side, there's the people from the INEOS side, and the longer that we have sort of been in bed with one another, trying to make all this knit together, the more we all wish to talk about the fact that this is the INEOS Britannia team, that we are at the beginning of a brilliantly exciting campaign. That the time, as ever in these campaigns, is short, and that we, the INEOS Britannia team, are the ones that are doing it. And that sense of happy family is the one that we wish to construct and nurture throughout it.
You obviously contributed in the last campaign, but does this feel altogether different? Does this feel like a different setup? Does it feel like it's sort of graduated to a whole other place now?
Well, yeah, I think last time round Toto mentioned that the people in the factory got engaged because we had some of our own down in Portsmouth working on the boat, and then eventually when it was racing, there was some people actually out there in Auckland. But we were brought in to be sort of capable bodies to sort of put their shoulder to the wheel, but we didn't have any real part in the strategy or the thinking behind it. We were just involved trying to help. And this time round, we are all, as you say, one big team trying to make sure that we put something competitive together. And so it does feel different because we've got a lot of skin in it. And we desperately wish to be making sure we're pulling our weight in that happy family and creating something that can be competitive when it comes to race time.
All these very clever people all in one room mulling over different ideas. Ben, talking of clever people, what about a new lead designer as well? Because we've got one on board.
Yeah, Martin, as mentioned, Martin Fischer, who's come and joined us. He's got great experience in America's Cup and naval architecture. But as James said, it's that mixture. You know, we've got a great team from 2 campaigns now, many of whom have come through, and merging that with the team here at Mercedes F1, that's really the key to getting the resource that we need. Ultimately, that sort of ultimately the sailing design mindset, and marrying that with the discipline and the approach that Formula One. I think that the continuity that Formula One has as well, I think really helps to build the organisation as these guys have. So if we can, in effect, piggyback onto that with our sailing design know-how, that we hope, we want to build the best team to get the job done.
I say it's been a busy 6 months. I mean, Dave Endine sat here in the middle, hasn't sat down until now, have you? You've been very, very busy. What's been going on? What's been happening? You're now COO.
Yeah, a few changes along the way. Well, I mean, we stopped pretty firmly in Auckland, and there was a bit of a regroup and took stock of where things were, obviously. I guess you got to be careful not to make rash decisions, going from one program to the next. And now we're trying to rebuild this group and make sure we get the right people involved. Working with the Mercedes team on who those skill sets need to be and where we apply. more focused this time, looking forward. So it's been a bit of a recruiting exercise, which is a little bit tough when the variables. There's still a lot of variables in terms of venue and timing and bits and pieces. So it's hard to engage some people at times, but and then the people that are here, give them some sort of structure and planning for their next 3 or 4 years of their life.
There's so much still to determine, isn't there, in Cup World? So what are you talking about right now? What are you chatting about right now behind all the closed doors and, to try and determine how you're going to lead this team forward?
Well, internally, of course, we're trying to plan, but like all of the teams, we need the protocol. So that's something that's on us as a challenger of record to negotiate that with the Defenders Team New Zealand. We're doing that. I wouldn't say either team has an understanding now what those rules look like. So we need to get that finalised by mid-November, which is the target. I think we're on track to do that. But until then, we are trying to build the right organisation, understand where people fit. But we need those specific rules to be able to sort of charge ahead, if you like. And that's the same for all the other teams. So we want to make sure that everybody gets those rules, those regulations as soon as they can so that we can all push forwards.
How has working with Mercedes affected sort of the cultural change with the team as well? I mean, has there been sort of, I'm not going to say it wasn't a professional unit before, but is it suddenly ramped up a whole gear because you're working with these guys who've been operating at the sharp end for so many years?
Well, like I said, that continuity that F1 has, so the professionalism, the discipline that you see when you come into this organisation, I think that's something, because America's Cup is very stop-start, and so it takes a long time to rebuild your work practices and your intellectual property and so on. So for us now, this is our third go-round as a team, so we are building up that intellectual property, but to be able to tie into this team and those working practices and the efficiency that brings, that's a big, big step forwards for us.
Jim, one of the things that you said at the beginning of the last campaign was we'll sort of set out on this mission. The most important thing is to give Ben a boat he can win in, which we didn't manage to do last time. So how important is it to not be on the back foot again this time as we head into the next campaign?
Well, I think what we learned in New Zealand is that we had a sailing team that was capable of winning the America's Cup, because I think Ben, I don't want to spare your blushes, but he did a super job.
It's not. We've got a squad of sailors on there. We've got Giles, who's
but it's Ben in your team. There were 11 of you on the boat. Yeah. But the boat wasn't good enough. So I mean, if we don't have a boat on the start line that's capable of winning, then we won't win. It's like putting Lewis in a slow car. He might be a very, very good driver, but he isn't going to win in a slow car in Formula One. It's no different to that. But having a fast boat is no guarantee of winning, because then it's down to a sport, and there are all sorts of uncertainties in sport, all sorts of uncertainties. So the objective really of the team is to get to the start line with a boat that has the potential of winning.
And James, looking at the Cup last time, were you watching it as an observer thinking, I know where we can affect the changes here, I know where we can make a difference? I mean, was that part of the thinking at that point that led you to ultimately all say, yes, let's do this together?
I think that would overstate my level of knowledge of all the subtlety and detail of the Cup, which is growing all the time for me. But last time round, we knew, because we'd been involved to some degree, we knew of some of the difficulties that the team had endured. We could see, and indeed were involved in trying to reduce some of those difficulties and try to help the boat to become more competitive. But we knew that fixing some of them would have involved a time machine. We would have had to go back a bit earlier, make a few decisions differently at the start of the campaign, and then it could have run in a different direction. And so we find ourselves now at the beginning of a fresh one, with the combined learning of the INEOS team and the part that we played in the previous one and what we saw, coupled with all the people who've joined us from other campaigns for this one. And we're trying to combine it to make sure that all our knowledge is pooled at the beginning, so that we don't wish we had a time machine 2 years from now. But that we feel like we stepped through this complicated design space in a good way to bring that boat that Jim talks about, the boat good enough to give Ben and the other sailors a chance to win.
And there are a lot of common sort of skill sets, technical aspects to a Formula One car and America's Cup boat. Because you've got wings, the boat's got foils. I mean, you know, one's in water, one's in air, but basically it's, you know, it's hydrodynamics, it's aerodynamics. You've got the whole aerodynamic aspect of the stuff that's out of the water. You've got all the systems things. I mean, they're all things which you get in the Formula One car.
Yeah, there's
You know,
many,
you've got skill
many
sets.
F1 skill sets that would lift directly into America's Cup and vice versa. People who could come from America's Cup and hold down a job in F1, no problem.
Yep.
And then there's areas which are specific to boats, that are things that we need to learn about.
So which of the bits do you find the most challenging? Which are the bits that you think, right, we've really got to dive in on that, know more about it?
It's the fine detail of things like the hydrodynamics on the foils. That is Formula One cars are very, very detailed in terms of how many things there are on them. Lots and lots of vortex shedding structures that all interact nicely with one another. And by comparison, you could look at the hydrofoil of an America's Cup boat and say, well, that looks simple. It's just a slender wing in the water, very, very little separation on it. But it's the fine, fine detail of that makes a huge difference. Whereas we're making quite big changes to lots and lots of jaggedy bits rather than hyper-optimizing one very slender bit. But there's honestly, there's loads and loads of challenge in it, up and down the boat.
I love that James just referred to it as jaggedy bits. I'm inspired by that. Brilliant. It means I can understand it.
Try.
So everyone here obviously sharing a common goal, which is to win the next America's Cup campaign and bring it back to Britain where it all started. None are more keen to win it than the Royal Yacht Squadron.
It is quite extraordinary that to this day, the America's Cup is the oldest sporting trophy on the planet of any sport in any period of time. It's just such an enduring competition which has moved so well with the times, yet is still full of twists and turns, intrigue, skullduggery, you name it, the America's Cup's got it. The role of the Challenge of Record is very important. It's a huge responsibility because it's the Challenge of Record who helps to shape the next Cup. So we're working at the moment very closely with Sir Ben and the team, with our friends at the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron, to ensure that the next Cup will be as open as it possibly can, with as many participants as we can muster, because that's what makes good competition. We were absolutely delighted when the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron proposed to us for this next Cup for AC37 we would be running a youth cup event and a women's cup event as well, and we embraced that wholeheartedly. It's incredibly important that we see a pathway and we create a pathway for young sailors coming up. We also need to address the balance of women in sailing, and it's something that we really want to see happen, and we're just delighted to be part of that historic beginnings of a Women's America's Cup. This is a building just full of the most extraordinary paintings, books, artefacts from all walks of yachting. But there's one significant artefact that's still missing: the America's Cup.
One thing the America's Cup has never been is fair. Toto, what are your sort of observations of it as a sporting contest in terms of parity? Because that has been an issue, a big one.
Well, I guess in every professional sport, when it becomes so competitive and everybody's trying to maximize the rules in their own favor, you need a strong governance. And we have struggled at times in Formula One, to say the least. But then we stumbled upon the America's Cup rules, and they're even more complicated, to call it that way. The challengers have to overcome a lot of obstacles in order to be actually competitive. But I guess this makes it so special.
Well, there is that. The Cup famous for its lack of fairness, Ben. So as challenger of record, how do we right that wrong? Do we, in fact, ever manage to do that? I mean, what are we going to do this time round that's going to be different from everything that's been before?
Well, I mean, to start off with, we have a great relationship with Team New Zealand and with Grant Dalton, who runs that team. I think the challenge with the Cup is, as we've said before, is that, somebody wins it might be the same team again, but then you put together a new set of regulations. And ultimately, long term, we need to try and get to a position where there is more neutral management of the game so that whoever wins it, there's more certainty where the Cup is going, what type of boat you're racing in, so on and so forth. But that is a big challenge to overcome the tradition of the Cup and the deed of gift as it's known, which is what the Cup rules are all based around. So it's a work in progress, really. But in this cycle, like I said, ourselves working with the Kiwis, supporting them to come together with a protocol that gives enough time for the teams to prepare. You've already said we're going to stick with the current class of boat. And we've had some initial discussions with some of the challenging teams or potential challenging teams about the modifications to the class rule, what people would like to see in that. So I think, the mid-November deadline is really important for both ourselves and Team New Zealand to make that deadline so that the other teams know what the protocol is, what the set of rules are, and like I said, everyone can move forwards and get cracking.
How fair do we really want it to be, Jim? I mean, if we're talking about the future, we're talking about this Cup now, but in the future, how fair do we want it to be? I mean, one of the things that Toto touched on there is that it does have this mystique and mystery about it. It's sort of a unique proposition.
It is slightly quirky because of the, the deed of gift is 200 years old and it doesn't have a governing body. So, you've got this very unique relationship between the defender and the challenger, and they obviously can describe the event in very different ways if they choose to, and they can sort of slightly, I don't know what there's an expression, isn't there, but stack the cards a little bit in their favour if they wish. But I think the whole nature of sport should be, personally, I think, if it isn't a level playing field, then, what have you achieved if you've won, really? I think, broadly, I think it's, we're sort of Brits, it should be a level playing field, and if Ben's going to win, he should win on a level playing field. That's where I come from, really.
Bertie Bickett alluded to it in that VT as well. The women's and the youth team, Ben, just to sort of expand on that a little bit, because that's a new thing too. Well, the youth team completely new.
Yeah, we've had youth actually, we won the last Youth America's Cup in AC35, so our young team.
Let's bring that
back. They did very well. So we need to do that. We need to learn a lesson from them in terms of winning the actual America's Cup. But no, joking aside, Youth America's Cup, Women's America's Cup's absolutely the right thing for the sport to grow and develop. And we're seeing that in other areas of the sport as well. And very much support that. So looking forward to it.
Okay, thanks everybody for joining us today. Thanks for just expanding on the whole reasons for this partnership working so well. We start another Cup challenge, but not just as a team on the water, but also uniting with a team very successful off it as well. We hope to see you next time. Thank you. If you're watching online, by the way, I should say that Cam is going to be talking to people in the cinema just around the back in just a couple of moments or so. So stay tuned for that, and Cameron will be delving into more Cup chat in the coming moments.
Thank you so much, Georgia. Yes, we've got a little bit of an extra opportunity to dive a little bit deeper into the forthcoming America's Cup 37. I'm joined by three of the main protagonists, more of the team to introduce you to. They'll be spearheading the team going forward. To my left is Geoff Willis, who's the technical director for both Mercedes-Benz Applied Science and also INEOS Britannia. I've got Giles Scott in the middle, two-time gold medal winner, who is one of the senior sailors in the team, and Martin Fischer, who is the head of design concept, who's come over from one of our competitors. So lots of juicy information to dive into. Giles, if you don't mind, I'm going to start with you. Yep. Fresh off the success from Tokyo, congratulations, sir, well done. What does it feel like to be back in the world of the America's Cup?
It's good, yeah, I'm loving it. It's great to be back. We're so lucky in the sport of sailing that as sailors we get the opportunity to compete in competitions like the America's Cup, the Olympic Games. They really are both pinnacles of the sport, and I'm one of the lucky few that gets to delve into that world.
Absolutely, and I'm guessing a slightly different sort of team environment. You know, a much bigger team around you now.
Yeah, no, you know, we're up here at Brackley, the Mercedes base, and a lot of very smart people around, which is great. And yeah, you know, it's exciting times going forward, and hopefully we can build on where we got to last time round, and you know, come out swinging for this next cup.
Absolutely, Geoff, an immensely glittering career in Formula One, but you've actually got a little bit of America's Cup experience starting early on in your career.
That's very true. Actually, the reason I'm in Formula One was because back in the late 80s, I was working with the then Blue Arrow America's Cup syndicate, the Peter de Savary headed syndicate, and I was hydrodynamicist in there. And that came to an untimely conclusion because of the New Zealand Michael Fay deed of gift race, a little bit involved in the IACC class rules, and then had to find something else to do and got into Formula One, and I've been in Formula One ever since. So coming back in and having the opportunity working back in America's Cup really feels very exciting.
So to go back, sort of, you know, rewind, I guess, you know, a couple of decades and stuff, and now you can see the excitement of what's coming up in America's Cup 37. Is there one or two things you can pinpoint that really kind of gets your engineering juices flowing?
Well, I think there's a lot of similarity between the mindset and the organisation you need for success in Formula One and what's needed for success in the Cup world. And it's really interesting to have a whole load of new technical challenges, as well as the challenge of putting an organisation together, a group of people. We've got a lot of very experienced Cup people that we get to talk to get to work with every day. And I think for all of us, you know, new challenge and new excitement that's what drives you, new challenges.
Absolutely, and we've got a lot of very talented competitors that we'll be up against. Martin, if I can bring you in as well. So you were with one of our competitors sort of last time out with Luna Rossa. Yes. What was it about the INEOS Britannia team that maybe attracted you or made you want to make the switch over to this team for America's Cup 37?
Well, difficult to say, but I got the impression in Auckland that the team was really very well set up, very well organized, and I spoke to a few people who were working at INEOS Team UK at that time, and whom I knew from other projects before, and that really sparked my interest to get into that team. And well, I contacted then a few people, leading people at INEOS, and fortunately it panned out in the end.
Excellent. So all throughout the live show with Georgie and the panel, we were inviting all our viewers to write in some questions. So we've got a few that I'm going to fire out. Don't worry, there's going to be nothing too serious for you guys. Martin, actually, if I can begin with yourself. So if we look back and do some sort of competitor analysis for the last time out in the America's Cup, do we know what the kind of key differentiators were between ourselves and the Emirates Team New Zealand? Do we know what those differences are, and how can we kind of change and look to improve on them for the next challenge?
Well, it's a difficult question. If we knew exactly, we would copy it. No, but I think there were a few points. One strong point of Team New Zealand has been that the key people there have been working a long time together. So I think it was their third or fourth campaign together. So that's definitely a strong point. And obviously, we won't be able to copy that, because we're getting together, not in a new team, but many people are working the first time together. And I think we can overcome that. But the main thing, I think, is Team New Zealand was able to identify key points of the design relatively early, and then focused on refining them. And in my opinion, that's where that was the main difference between them and all the other competitors. And in the end, well, it was successful, and you have to refine all the details, and they could put more effort into refining a path. They had a single path they had identified early on.
And Giles, just moving on from that, from first-hand experience of being on the boat, in terms of your career so far in sailing, what do you do in terms of competitor analysis? Do you dive deep into who you're up against if it's a single sailor event, or what's your kind of process?
Yeah, I mean, I run a very heavy review process. I have always done that in all my Olympic sailing, and the Cup is very much a scaled-up version of that. when thinking back to the last edition of the America's Cup, it was pretty clear to see that the Kiwis were a good step up on actually almost all of the competitors in terms of the technical development that they put together, and they've got a great set of sailors too. And our job as a challenger is to go back, learn, and come back in a better place and try and jump over the top of them.
But I assume that's just a continual process, isn't it, all the time?
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't really start or end. It does. It's a rolling ball for sure.
Excellent. Geoff, if I can come to you, we had a question just to someone asking if they could just clarify some of the different roles and how the Mercedes F1 team will kind of integrate. So you've got yourself as technical director, and then we have James Allison as well. Is it possible to just sort of explain what those roles will be?
Yes, I mean James acts as he's now chief technical officer for the whole F1 organisation, which includes not just the chassis side, but also the power unit side and other functions. And I'm responsible for the applied science for the non-Formula One activity, and I take over the role as technical director in the INEOS Britannia team. We've got clearly the Cup experienced people are really key, and so we've made sure we've got people like Martin, people like Giles, but in the design and in the different technical area of sail design, hull design, foil design, we've got people with a good, very strong Cup background, and what we're bringing in from the F1 side is very capable engineering and analysis tools in simulation, in aerodynamics, hydrodynamics, and materials and design. And it's my task is to make sure that I can bring the resources that are appropriate to the team in a way that support the experience of the Cup engineers and the Cup sailors. And for me, that's a fantastic challenge.
This actually leads nicely on to my next question. Gentleman, Christopher Reef, thank you for putting this in there. So it's for you, Geoff. How much are you able to learn from INEOS Britannia that then you can put into practice with the F1 team? So how much information, I guess, is going both ways?
Well, on a technical basis, there are differences, areas that are specific to the Cup world. But I think whenever you're trying to look at a new problem and look at a new technical challenge, I think it sort of stimulates creativity, it stimulates thinking, and in solving one type of problem, you can come back to Formula One and say, well, I've had to solve a problem in a slightly different way, maybe I can use that way. So you clearly can't take a piece from the yacht and put it on the car, no. But actually the thinking that you use to solve that new problem on the yacht, you can then bring back to, maybe there's a different way into my technical problem I'm trying to solve. So we get a lot of enthusiasm. Almost all of the F1 engineers want to be involved, so we're having to sort of hold them back because they've got a car to build.
So if we put a huge sail on Lewis's W12, you're saying it wouldn't improve us going down the straights?
We won't be doing that, no.
Martin, if I can come to you, please. Obviously, Ben alluded to it a little bit earlier that we're still waiting for those final protocols or final rules to be confirmed. How far can you go down a design process before you know the final details?
Well, at the moment we can only work on concepts because we don't know the final version of the protocol. We don't know the final rule set. So it's all still a bit vague, and therefore we cannot go into the details. But of course we can work on the concepts. We all know, not only we but also the other challengers or potential challengers, that the class rules will be more or less the same as last time. There won't be big changes. It is also generally known that there's a desire to improve the light wind performance of the boats. So we can work in that direction, but not more. So we can't go into the details of the rules. We have to wait.
Absolutely. Giles, if I can come to you, if I may. So a question from Jason Crouch. So he was keen to see how the Women's America Cup cycle will migrate into the mixed teams. For those of us who maybe don't follow the sport as closely, what is the situation at the moment with kind of the gender mix in sailing, and what needs to happen for it to improve?
Well, in the Olympic world in sailing, there's been a huge push for equal medals, male to female, and for this next Olympic cycle, that I think is the first time in history that's being achieved. And I think it's great to see that, you know, the America's Cup is also trying to help promote that with the Women's America's Cup, which I think, you know, from my standpoint, is a huge platform for all the great female sailors that are out there. And, you know, certainly from a British standpoint, we'll be in a very strong position to put forward a really strong competitive female team. And yeah, I think it's a great place to be, and something that I think is very exciting for the sport.
Excellent. I'm going to need your help on this one as well, because there's some technical stuff that I'm not aware of. So, question from a gentleman called Roger Crouch. Thank you, Roger. Will race performance in the lightest possible airs, brackets, meaning rapidity in getting up and on the foils, will that totally dominate the design criteria for all the America's Cup teams? So maybe a question for the pair of you there.
Well, we know that the AC-75 class is, without doubt, the most amazing boat that I've ever sailed. And if it has one Achilles, it is the light wind performance. Like, the boats they're big boats, and when they're in full displacement mode, so boat fully in the water, they pick up quite a lot of drag, and a big design space. In the last edition of the America's Cup was trying to optimise that light wind performance, and you saw that through some teams having really big foils, hull shapes being completely different, and as it actually rolled out, the Kiwis managed to do some very clever things with their hull and managed to make a small foil work. So yeah, everyone out there will be trying to push that end of the design space. But that being said, it's not the only problem out there. It is an important problem, and as you know, sailors get better, design gets better, takeoff actually becomes less of a problem, because ideally you don't need to take off. You know, we did many races in the last America's Cup where the wind was up, admittedly, but we don't touch the water, so takeoff never becomes an issue. It is in that light wind where it is a real. You need to get it right, because you can be dead in the water.
Yeah. So we have, I guess, a similar thing in Formula One, where we're obviously trying to design a car that will work across a number of circuits, 23 different circuits, or 22 this year, and so you kind of draw a line of best fit, I assume, and try and make a. Is that the same in America's Cup? You're trying to design a boat that will operate across a load of different conditions, Martin.
Yes, yes, of course. Well, what we are actually doing is we are looking, once we know the venue, we don't know it yet, but once we know it, we look at the wind speed probabilities, so at the wind speed probability distribution, and then we are checking what are the most likely conditions, and then we try to design a boat that will win more races than others for the conditions that we expect. When I say the conditions that we expect, that does not mean that we are just looking at the average wind speed, but really at the probability of each wind speed that may happen. And as a result, it could be that we accept to lose races in some conditions, so that we design a boat where we know in these conditions we won't win, but these conditions are very unlikely to happen, therefore we accept that.
And is that similar to F1, when you say, well, there will be some sort of maybe a high downforce circuit that where our car's maybe not as good at or something?
Yes, that is true, because in the car world we're designing to win a championship, and some of the outlier circuits, if you designed to optimise for those, you'd compromise your ability across all the other circuits. So we all know, probably the different teams have got slightly different views, but we will know which races in a given season are the ones we're going to struggle, and conversely we know which ones we're going to be successful in. But as Martin says, it's really a statistical game. You've got to model all the possible conditions you've got, and that's why we're really keen to know where the venue is, because once we know that, then we can start. Yeah. And that's true for everybody.
There are so many variables at play, like you say, the climatic conditions any given time of year. Giles, as a sailor, when you're going to a new competition in a new venue, how long do you go beforehand to kind of ingratiate yourself, get used to it? Is there like a sixth sense about how the wind will operate, etc.?
Yeah, you can learn a lot from the venue. Weather patterns, wind shifts, local features, tidal features, how the sea chops up. And yeah, you can spend a number of years in a build-up to a regatta, and in the Olympic world, that's exactly what you do. It's slightly different with the Cup because it's very much a design race. So you become a bit more reliant on the stats. But one thing I will say is that the weather's always unpredictable. I know you can hedge statistically, but boats always need to be able to cover the range of conditions, and that's why it's so difficult.
So just recently, over in Tokyo, how long did you give yourself to kind of prep for those conditions?
Well, COVID hit the prep for the Olympics pretty hard, so I didn't get out there for 18 months before the Games. But in a normal Olympic cycle, I'd do 60 days a year in venue throughout the 3 or 4 years. So yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, preparation is key. So as soon as we know the details, we can go kind of like full steam ahead. Geoff, question from Andrew Benson. Can you explain how F1 technology can help with making the boats faster and better?
F1 technology, there are overlaps. We know clearly we've got foils, and in F1 we understand that sort of aerodynamics or hydrodynamics. There are things that we aren't used to in Formula One, the free surface effects, the fact that you've got these foils operating quite close to the surface of the water, and we've got flexible lifting aerodynamic devices in the form of sails, which again are slightly new, but we've got lots of flow features which we understand well. But as well as the technical aspects of the aerodynamics and hydrodynamics, you've got the structural aspects of its composite structure, hull, very similar in concept to how we build chassis. And then there are lots of systems, hydraulic systems, gearboxes for transferring the power from the grinders, quite a lot of engineering tools. But in fact, I think what's more similar is that these are high performance, difficult problems to solve. And I think in some ways it's the mindset and the ability to bring in resources in lots of different directions, and this need to have a holistic design to balance off pure performance against what you can achieve in the time scale. I mean, bluntly, we don't have enough time to do an America's Cup boat. We never have enough time to do the race car. We're always up against those pressures, and I think a lot of that is what I'm hoping to bring that experience from the F1 world into the experience that all the Cup guys have got. And I think that's going to be, it's that sort of synthesis and synergy between the two organisations that really makes me very excited to be part of it.
The crossover is hugely exciting. I think it's going to be really, really interesting next few years. Giles, got another question in talking about fitness levels of elite sailors. Do you have your own personal plan? Will that be kind of tailored towards when the Cup is obviously announced, when we know the exact dates and what have you? How hard is it?
For the grinders, it's certainly very hard. And it depends on how the rules shape up in terms of how that power is developed. But these fast America's Cup boats are incredibly power hungry, and the racing is, for certain crew members, not all, but some crew members, it is effectively like time trialing. Our grinders in the last Cup were capable of putting out similar wattage with their arms to some of the top cyclists in the world. So, yeah, they were a fit bunch of guys, and there was a few of us at the back of the boat that didn't have to get too hot and sweaty. But yeah, fitness is a massive part of it as well.
So that begs the question. Geoff, Martin, will you be jumping on board to have
Too dangerous. I'm missing both the fitness and the talent.
Awesome. Well, I think that about wraps up our time for today. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate it, and for going a little bit deeper into some of the questions that were asked of us. Really looking forward to the next few years, and we wish you all the best with your endeavours in that respect. To everyone watching at home, thank you very much for your time today. And if you'd like to keep up to date with any new news or developments, then you can visit the team's website, INEOS Britannia. Thank you very much, and have a lovely day.